What is situational awareness? It is simply knowing what is going on around you. I know that sounds like a simple concept, but it actually requires a lot of practice. It is taught to soldiers, law enforcement officers, and government-trained assassins. While none of us are Jason Bourne, even as civilians, it is an important skill to learn and practice. Just being aware of a hazard or threat seconds before anyone else can keep you, your loved ones safe, or your coworkers safe. We're going to look at situational awareness and apply the concepts to life in general, as well as the workplace. Whether you realize it or not, your mind is constantly going through the OODA loop. The OODA loop is a learning system and a decision-making process that was developed by Air Force pilot and military strategist John Boyd. It stands for Observe, Orient, Decide, Act. Most people associate the observe portion with situational awareness, but what is it specifically you're observing? The orient portion is what situational awareness actually involves. Orientation tells you what you should be looking for while you're observing, and then puts the observations into thought so you know what to do with the information. Think of orientation like a translator from your senses to your brain. You always want to stay in a relaxed alert status. This means there are no specific threats, but you are constantly taking in your surroundings using all of your senses. Most people think that visual stimulation is the only way to observe, but oftentimes your sense of hearing may play equally important. Even though you're always scanning, you should remain calm and relaxed. By staying in a calm and relaxed state, your body can intake and process more of the surroundings. Added stress causes tunnel vision or narrow focus and can limit your body's ability to take in all processes and all information. Also, by staying relaxed, you won't bring any extra attention to yourself in public. Body positioning is a key factor in the observation process. Always position yourself in a place to be able to observe as much of your surroundings as possible. In a public place, like a restaurant, try to sit in a manner where you can always face as many exits as possible and see who is entering and exiting. Ideally, you would want your back to the wall. This allows you to make a quick getaway if necessary and reduces the risk of a threat or hazard popping up behind you. Put yourself in a position to be able to always see as much as you can. This same concept applies to being in an LPP store or distribution center. It's not always possible to follow these guidelines, though. If you're standing in line somewhere or sat at a table in the middle of a restaurant, that is really beyond your control. Just do the best you can in every scenario. Practice memorizing your surroundings to strengthen your skills. When you go places, make a note of a few things about your environment. Note the number of people there are in the room or behind the counter, the clothing and gender of the person sitting next to you, how many exits and entrances there are, and etc. Practice your memorization skills and practice observing. It will help you with the next step of the OODA loop. The orient part puts the information from the observation into a format so your mind can make a decision. Essentially, the orient provides three things: baselines and anomalies for our particular environment, mental models of human behaviors that we should look for, and plans of action depending upon our observations. Establish a baseline for the environment. Every setting is different, though some may be similar. An example is an LPP storefront with customers looking at products on the shelf, discussing their product, or placing an order. In theory, the customers should at least reasonably be able to competently discuss HVAC components. We establish baselines so we can spot anomalies or abnormalities. According to Patrick Van Horn, a situational awareness expert, instructor of the Marine Combat Profiling System, and author of Left of Bang, anomalies are things that either do not happen and should, or that do happen and shouldn't. Anomalies are what we should pay more attention to while we are taking in our surroundings to achieve situational awareness. But to pay attention to anomalies, we have to first establish a baseline. Van Horn suggests that you mentally ask yourself these baseline questions every time you enter a new environment. What's going on here? What's the general mood of the place? What is the normal activity that I should expect here? How do most people behave here most of the time? An anomaly question is what would cause someone to stand out. As you're in a store or distribution center, continuously ask yourself those questions. Ask more questions to develop a better baseline or determine anomalies. Our inability to pay attention to everything all at once makes it impossible to obtain complete situational awareness. The human brain can only handle so much information at a given time. That being said, how we direct our attention is vital. Just like in business, we need to focus on a few things at a time to get the best bang for our buck. Van Horn says we do that by using heuristics. Heuristics are quick and dirty problem-solving and decision-making mental shortcuts our minds use to figure things out when minimal information is available and time is limited. Merriam-Webster defines a heuristic as involving or serving as an aid to learning, discovery, or problem-solving by experimental and especially trial and error methods. Decisions made from heuristics aren't always perfect, but in the context of your personal safety, they're usually good enough. Pay attention to people's body language. Most people are calm when out in public or within our facilities. If they appear uneasy, it doesn't necessarily mean they are a threat, but they are definitely worth paying more attention to. Now that you've observed and oriented yourself, what happens next? Have a plan of action. You often don't have time to develop a well-thought-out plan when something happens. You have to have a basic idea of how to mitigate the hazard prior to it happening. Since every situation is different and ever-changing, there is no cookie-cutter way to mitigate all the risks. When you enter a room and develop your baseline, you're looking for the anomalies. While identifying those, quickly have a plan on how to mitigate those. When you're walking through the warehouse and see a forklift approaching, what is the best manner to get out of the way if the driver doesn't see you? If a fire breaks out, what is your quickest exit from the building? Your closest fire extinguisher if it's small enough to put out. These quick plans should become second nature. Situational awareness is a mindset that you have to purposely cultivate. You want to get to the point that it's just something you do without having to think about it. To get to that point, you have to practice it regularly. Starting today, consciously remind yourself to look for entry and exit points whenever you enter a new building. Start observing people and establishing baselines, generating possible anomalies while you're at work, at the gym, or on a date. And then start coming up with action plans on what you would do in that specific situation if you see a possible threat. Don't be paranoid, just be mindful. Do that day in and day out, and situational awareness won't be something you have to intentionally think about, just something you do naturally. Even though none of us are Jason Bourne, we should still be aware of our surroundings to enhance personal safety.